So today we're talking about the love languages in Tantric Intimacy. And what we're going to do is we're going to compare love and connection in Tantric relationships and intimacy with the 5 love languages of Gary Chapman's book. And this is very interesting because I have a lot of respect for the 5 love languages, in this book. I think it was extremely helpful to let us look at our relationships in very different ways and understand kind of how different we all are. We have a habit of projecting who we are onto other people, and then we feel like it's a lack of love and all that. And I think that book really helped us to see our partners as actually different than us, and that they actually may tend to share love in very different ways, and they may also enjoy receiving love in different ways. So I think it's a beautiful book. But how we connect in Tantric Intimacy is slightly different, and yet these all connect very interestingly. Not only, this is my book, Tantric Intimacy. The whole first section is about love. So the book, our talk is going to be about that, but it also connects in with the divine union discussion. And that's really where the love languages come in, and it's very interesting. So I'm quite intrigued about this talk. So the first thing we have to do is talk about what Tantric Intimacy means. What are we really talking about there? Now, Tantra at its foundation is about experiencing the infinite and the finite as one, as experiencing the divine within the physical world. So what that means is we don't poo-poo the physical world. We don't look at relationships as something that distract us from our path, or money or jobs or kids or being part of the community or even watching Netflix or whatever. This is just part of being human. The key is to also remember that we're divine, and also be not striving, but always expanding into our true self, our true divine and physical self all the time. That's really the journey. It's not so much like a Jacob's ladder of enlightenment. It's just simply perpetually bringing the physical and the divine together. How can we keep mixing these so that we are clear, and so that we don't kind of live in ignorance? And I mean that in the kindest way, because very often if we get lost in the physical world, we end up becoming quite ignorant of our divine nature, right? We actually get so caught up in our pain or our trauma or our limitations that we forget how amazing we are and how much potential we really have. And in the same token, if we get caught up in what I'll say is a spiritual journey, which isn't really spiritual because it's not actually expansive. It's really just, well, I burn incense and I do these things, and instead of buying fancy cars and doing this, I just go on 100 yoga retreats. It's not really any different. Both are awesome, but they're both actually kind of materialistic. Instead, we have this beautiful, expansive spiritual journey into the unknown, into the infinite, while we are fully in the world, right? While we are engaging in whatever it is this physical body, this incarnation, this personality wants to do, needs to do. And this is what sets Tantra aside from many other practices, journeys, is that it's not about one or the other. It's the divine union of both that actually creates bliss in life. So what does that mean in terms of love? What does it mean in terms of intimate connection? What is a tantric connection? So imagine connecting with someone. Let's imagine you connect with someone sort of from that, I'm going to say ignorant place, but again, I don't mean this in a mean way. I mean this just in a place where I am completely caught up in all of my limitations of being human. I'm maybe caught up with what my body looks like, or how much money I have, or something I experienced in my childhood, or resentment or whatever, but I'm lost in that. How easily can we actually connect with another person? Well, it's very hard, right? Because we have this shell almost against anyone because we're hurt, we're afraid, we're lost. It's not a personality flaw. It's just that's where I am right now. So part of our journey, let's say we're on our own in Tantra, which we always are, right? But part of the journey is healing all that, is bringing that divinity within and saying, okay, I've had these experiences. How does this expand me? How do I actually exercise prayer and meditation to help me find my way out of this incredibly contracted place, right? But let's say you are in a contracted place and you are in a relationship with someone, or maybe they're in a contracted place and you're like, come on, like whatever, right? The reality is there is no actual connection. There's two beings together, there's two bodies. Maybe there's a little connection here, but all these other pieces are all like shut down. And maybe there's a little connection here. So there's we're touching at a distance, but there's actually all this resentment, and there's all these unsaid things, and there's all this anger, and maybe even jealousy and judgment, right, of the other person. Well, every time you have a judgment of someone else, you shut down something. And when they feel that judgment, they put a wall up energetically. It's not wrong. It just is what it is. It's almost like you're always in a little bit of a battle zone. So shields are up, weapons are out, even though on a very deep heart place, we actually want to connect. We want to feel loved. We want to love this person. But we have so many unresolved issues. No matter what our bodies even want to do, even if we reach out and touch them, there's like huge energetic elephants in between us. So the journey of Tantric intimacy is figuring out how to drop all of those elephants. How do we get rid of all of those energetic obstructions? That's the journey. And to really have faith even that it's possible. That you actually, on a tantric path, could come to the place where you are so content and happy with yourself that you're able to completely open yourself to another person. That you know that when you have something to say, there's truth that has to be shared. And not, you've got to hear this. It's just truth with what is. It's just communication. It's a way of connecting as a way of judging or making someone wrong, right? So we can see that we have a distance to go in our world, which again is why the 5 Love Languages book is so potent in the world. So the first question we have to ask ourselves is, what is love? And I think even in the dawn of time, we could imagine romantic love, right? We could imagine falling in love, seeing this person and your heart pounds and you're all excited. Maybe you're even erotically turned on. Who knows? But you are in love. So on some level, we know this, right? But then marriage became an institution of the state. Religion got in there and you weren't allowed to divorce. You weren't allowed to do this. There was this domination paradigm that put parents over children and husbands over wives and all these kind of things. And yet inside of that, we said, I'm only doing this because I love you. Well, I know he's mean to me, but I love him. And we have all these words all these things that we call love. But the problem is it's been so overused and it's been so intertwined with abuse, passive aggression, sociopathic narcissism, all kinds of things, that the word love has lost all meaning. So first, I'd like to redefine it in a different way. And this is just one idea. But let's play with this. So back in 1999, I was sick. This was my great healing crisis of my life. I was 29 years old. I had breast lumps growing in my body. My mom had just died of breast cancer. Her mom had died of breast cancer. And I met a teacher, a man, who helped me unpack this lineage that was killing all the women in my family. And I ended up having a miraculous healing. And this is actually the story in my book, What If You Could Skip the Cancer? Jim was my teacher, and he defined love as how human beings connect, right? This is how human beings actually join together. And not necessarily touching, I just mean, how do we connect with each other? Well, to him, this was the energy of love, which is very interesting when you think of all the things that we want to call love, but perhaps aren't. And that's a very interesting litmus strip, that when someone does something, we know it's loving if it draws us together. And we know that it isn't love if it drives us apart. And it's just an interesting thing if we ever have to ask ourselves, is this a loving thing? Well, does it push us further apart? Does it create more distance? Then it's not love. Whether it was meant to be said or important to be said, it's not that judgment. It's just a question, is it love? It may even be a primary part of your relationship, but it's not love. So the foundation of all loving experience is what the ancient Greeks would call agape. And agape is defined as God's love of man, or loving each other through the eyes of God. Now, whether you like the word God or not, you can even say through divine eyes, through infinite eyes, through the eyes of the galaxy, to elevate our thought, to elevate our philosophy, and then look at another person. This is agape. So in this elevated sight of another person, what do we see? Well, we see a soul on a journey. It might be a very difficult journey, and it might be a journey that we don't understand and we can't identify with. From our human eyesight, we might say, well, they're on the wrong journey. They're making bad choices. They're not awake. They're not enlightened. They need to do this. And you know what else they need to do? And you know what I would do is if I were in their eyes, right? This is kind of that wounded human's perspective because we've lost sight of our own divinity. So to be able to access our own divine self, we then look at others through those divine eyes. And instead, we simply see another friend in the sandbox. We don't know their home life. We don't know what they've lived through. We don't know. But we'll play with them in the sandbox, right? We're just a bunch of kids, really, when it comes right down to it. This is agape. This is total respect for another person's journey, whether we understand it or not, whether it makes us comfortable or not, whether or not we would make the same choices or not. Because of course we wouldn't. We're not that soul. So agape asks us to be our tantric selves. It asks us to be fully divine, fully human. I can even look at someone and say, wow, this incarnation, this physical person I am, is so uncomfortable with this, right? But I see that as my limitation. And it's not a bad thing. It's just, wow, from this perspective, based on the person I have become or who I am, that's hard to watch. But my divine self knows it's not my path. It's their path. So I love them and I respect their path. So when we have this lovely respect for someone else's journey, whether we understand it or not, kindness naturally follows. Why would we be anything but kind to another person? Now, kindness, whenever I'm teaching courses and I talk about being kind, for example, I have an online course called Foundations for Tantric Intimacy that has been running for just over 10 years now. And there's homework in it. And one of the very first assignments that people have is that for 1 week, they have to be 100% kind to their partner, their children, their family. And the number of people that said, well, that's impossible. Now, one of the things I realized after a while was that we weren't talking about the same thing. Kindness doesn't mean not being angry. Kindness doesn't mean not having a bad day. Kindness is, what do you do with that feeling? Do you throw it at the other person? Do you use your fatigue as an excuse to lash out at someone? You know, in the year 2024, we know that if you're tired, you can't just reach out and hit somebody. And yet we can do it with words, right? We can do it with other actions and slamming doors and doing all kinds of things, right? What's the difference? Kindness, first of all, we must experience whatever feelings we have. We're not going to oppress reality. But whether we treat someone else differently, that's the question. We have full control over how we treat others. And if we don't, we have to look at that. We have to look at why we have unconscious, compulsive behaviors of being unkind. This is not normal. This is not normal behavior, or maybe it's normal, but it's not healthy behavior for us or for the other people. It is a sign that something has to be healed there. So agape is full kindness and full respect for others. Imagine living like that. But this is the foundation of all connection. All connection. Imagine you have two people, but this person over here thinks that what this person's doing is really not that bright. Wall, right? They cannot have a free-flowing, intuitive connection because this is what's really going on in their minds. It's like, I once read the book Mutant Message Down Under by Marlo Morgan. And one of the things they talked about in there was that human beings are designed to be completely intuitive, empathic, and telepathic. Well, and they said the only reason that the Western world, or what they would call the mutants, most of, quote, civilized society, are not telepathic is because we would be afraid that you could hear my thoughts. I don't want you to hear my thoughts because it's full of judgment and it's full of things, my thoughts are full of things that I don't want you to hear. And I'm so sensitive and so full of judgment of myself, I can't hear the thoughts that you're having about me either. So we naturally block that off, right? We block off any kind of telepathic connection with each other. Unless it's someone you have agape with. Then suddenly, you just relax your guards and it doesn't matter because you know they're not judging you and you know they're going to be kind. This is a massive deal in parenting, in friendship, and definitely in intimacy. From there, we can go deeper. We can have agape for strangers on the street. We can have agape for famous people. We can have agape for anybody because we simply just, we understand that they are just another human on the planet, another soul in the sandbox, but we may not necessarily know them deeply. If we want to deepen this love, we experience philia. And philia is defined as brotherly love. This is where you actually are friends. And I mean friends. I don't mean acquaintances. I don't mean someone we sat beside in English class. I mean loving friends. So there's already agape. These aren't judgmental friends. These aren't people, I don't know, we party with or something and they're a little bit of a jerk unless they've had a drink or two. I mean, loving friends in life, soul friends. So what does that look like? Well, it's safe. It's sanctuary. There's obviously there's no judgment, there's no nothing, but you have each other's back and you can share stories. Humans tend, not all humans, but we tend to be very verbal. And we can really process a lot of our experiences verbally with a friend. And of course, as we speak verbally, other thoughts and emotions and feelings are shared as well, like in true communion with each other. So philia is when we take it deeper, we take agape into a personal space, right? And then from philia, maybe this person, with someone, there are erotic feelings. Now, eros, loving sexual connection in that way. Imagine eros within philia, within agape. Imagine what's possible there. So now all of a sudden, you are sitting in front of someone. You're naked. This person you trust completely. You have nothing unsaid with them. There is no resentment. There is nothing. You only feel love, support, and kindness from this person. And you also have that special little erotic flavor that we don't have with everyone. It is very special. What is possible here? If you contrast this to, say, sexual intimacy, where there isn't agape, right? There is judgment, there is resentment, there are unresolved issues with the other person. You can definitely have sex. Might take a drink or this or that, or smoke something, or, there's lots of ways to kind of quieten down all the judgment and the elephants in the room. You can kind of ignore them by doing whatever you want to do. And then you just sort of have procreative sex, not necessarily to make babies, but you rub together, you create some pleasure, you ejaculate, you have orgasms, and you get on with your life, right? It's easy. Animals do it all the time without any of this tantric intimacy, right? But we're more than that. And when we can drop all of those things, because realize too that when I can drop all of those guards with another human, I can drop them with me. If I can't drop them with me, I can't drop them with you. That's why the tantric path is always a solo path, even if you're in a partnership, right? So all of a sudden, I've dropped all my guards. I am literally this divine being incarnate in this body. I am seeing this other beautiful body in front of me. And now imagine what happens when those bodies touch. Imagine when those bodies embrace. Imagine when those bodies join together in intercourse. Imagine the energy flowing through those bodies. But all of these levels of love are necessary, or else there'll always be energetic walls in between. Which is why tantric intimacy isn't just, well, I'm just going to go have this experience, or let's just do this ritual so that we can have a tantric experience. Tantra is life. Tantra is bringing that divine aspect into our life. And what that means in a very practical way is prayer and meditation. And this is Jim, my teacher. He used to always say that prayer has 3 steps. First, you ask the question. 2, you listen for guidance. And 3, you take action, even if it's something you've never done before and couldn't have fathomed. And I don't mean weird, kinky stuff. I mean vulnerable communication. That is how you release the elephants. That's how you let them go in kindness, so that you actually can have a free flow of energy between you. So how do these levels of love interact, or how do they apply to the 5 love languages? Now, first of all, I have to say I am not a trained teacher or certified with Gary Chapman or anything like that for the 5 love languages. I've read the book, and this is my perspective on how it fits into a tantric relationship. So the 5 love languages are words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts, receiving or giving, quality time, and physical touch. Now, one of the challenges when we apply the 5 love languages to our lives is we get stuck in them. And sometimes they even create expectations in our partner that isn't loving at all. So, for example, let's take words of affirmation. Some people love to hear words of affirmation. It really, hearing those sounds go right into their body. Their body vibrates. They can feel that love right down their spine. This is true. Some people love to say wonderful things, and they're very eloquent. They just say them, they almost speak in poetry. Well, you can imagine if a person who naturally speaks in poetry is with someone who loves to receive in that way. Oh, they don't even have to get naked to have orgasms, right? They can just sit, and the person giving, because of course this is where this is very interesting. The divine union of the masculine and feminine, right? This is the masculine and this is the feminine. So here is this guy, or not guy, well, anyone, male or female, giving all this poetry, and it's being received, and that reception is so appreciative, and then more poetry is drawn out and more is received, and it is this incredible talking and receiving, beautiful union, this true communion through verbal gifting. How wonderful is that? But what if your partner isn't eloquent? What if poetry is so far from who they are? Then what? Well, here's the thing. When we want to be on a tantric journey, we are always expanding ourselves, right? So maybe you know that your partner loves words of affirmation, but you're just not that good at it. You're just not. You're just, for some reason, it's like for me, if I try to draw, there's a joke that goes around the internet that when I want to draw a horse running across a beach, this is what I see in my mind, and there's beautiful rolling clouds and the horse's hair is flying behind them, but this is what I draw, and it's literally a stick horse, and you can barely tell anything. Like sometimes that's what it's like trying to speak, especially loving words, especially to someone you deeply care about, because there is so much at stake here. But for that person who would still like to be in that masculine role of giving, and this can go back and forth in a couple, it's not necessarily the person who's always in that polarity. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, just check out my other video about choosing your polarity in intimacy. But if you want to share with your partner, because you know they love this, one, do it in your way. Really close your eyes, ask for guidance, and just say, I want to say something really beautiful to my partner, and see what comes. Because what's beautiful about divine guidance is it doesn't actually come in words, right? It comes as an energy or as an imprint, but then it will come out in your language. It will come out in your way. And this is a beautiful way to expand ourselves. And again, it doesn't have to come out perfectly. It just has to come out like you. Now, in the same light, another beautiful thing you could do, if you're the one that would like to give in this way, find poetry that you love. And why would you do it? You're like, well, I don't even like poetry. I don't even like that stuff. But you love your partner. And one of the things about tantric intimacy is the only goal is connection. It's not about having your needs met. It's not about, getting lucky. It's not about having someone to pay bills with. It's deeper than that. It is the realization that when two hearts truly connect, magic happens. So all we want is actually to connect with this other person. That's what we desire. So if that means, check out some books from the library of beautiful romantic poetry. And if something in there rings true for you and it makes you feel like like your loved one makes you feel, you can take that to them and maybe just say, I have something for you. And you can even say, I'm not great at saying things myself, but I read this and it really made me think of you. It made me think of us. And read it and try. The thing is that life is about expansion. Life is about perpetual growth. We don't have to be stuck in our limitations, right? Similarly, what if you're on the other side of this? What if your partner loves words of affirmation? Like they are just loving you with their, thoughts and their words all day long. But that's not your bag. You're like, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Imagine really listening and ask yourself, why don't you care? Why can't you hear this? Why can't you hear loving thoughts coming your way? What is that? Why is there a block up to loving thoughts? Maybe people have been like this with you your whole life. Maybe it's that whole problem we talked about at the beginning, where people say, oh, I do this because I love you. And, and they're always sort of, blowing smoke up your backside kind of thing. But then they turn around and they are mean to you. So you've actually developed a distrust of people, that even if they're nice to you, you don't believe it. Unless actions follow, I believe nothing you're saying. It's an interesting question. Why, if I believe this person loves me, and this is how they naturally give love, why don't I receive it? And all it means is it's just a journey inside of healing. That's all. It doesn't mean there's something wrong. It doesn't mean that you have to now change how you prefer to receive love. It just means to be able to receive it would be lovely, right? And this is a dance. It's not just one way. It's not just one person having to, meet your needs or you having to meet their needs by receiving it. It's not like that. What about acts of service? Well, what's interesting about acts of service is, especially in the masculine feminine dynamic, this is a huge part of the masculine role. This wonderful joy. People who love being in the masculine love being of service. They love doing things that make their partner smile, right? They love that. So acts of service could be anything. It could be a back rub. It could be making a cup of tea. It could be cutting the lawn. It could be whatever. But there is something really joyful about that if it makes your partner smile. So again, what if your partner loves to do this, but that's not how you want to receive love? Again, why not? Why aren't we able to have agape? Why aren't we able to see this other person and love them? Now, this is also, it's really, really important to understand that being tantric also means that we are whole. We don't need love from someone else to feel happy, right? This isn't a codependent thing, that I need you to receive my love in this way, or I need to receive love from you in this way to feel loved. I already am love. I am connected to the divine. I am connected within. I love me. This is the final love. It has nothing to do with other people. So then all of a sudden, when we interact with someone else, we have full consciousness that every single gift to us is extra. Every single act that they perform for us is a desire to connect deeper. That's the only reason. Now, if there are strings attached, and there's a whole, like I said, I talk about a lot of that in the book, but if there's strings attached, that's not love, right? That's manipulation, that's other things. I'm talking about love. You are in a loving relationship and they're doing things for you. This is extra. This is really important to understand. Similarly, maybe your partner loves acts of service. They love receiving things like that. It's just not your bag. It just, you'd like to talk a lot, or you'd like to just sort of touch them, or you'd like to do something else, but that's not it. Well, then expand. Try. I mean, the thing is, once we know that the other person absolutely is filled by this, then do it. Right? It's almost like sometimes we believe in our limitations so much, we don't even want to grow. We don't even want to try new things. It's almost like we never want to travel to a new country and try to do something differently than we've always done them. And again, we don't have to change our nature. But if the goal is to connect with this other human, why not learn their language? If they speak Spanish, then I'd like to learn some Spanish. Right? There's an expansive way of living here. And same thing goes with receiving gifts, right? Maybe we love to receive gifts. Maybe we love to give gifts. Maybe we don't really like to give gifts and we don't really like to receive gifts. We don't really care. We can still say, thank you. I really appreciate this. Thanks. Because what we appreciate is the energy of it. We appreciate that they love doing it. Now, again, part of the reason we have issue here is that sometimes people will give gifts because they did something wrong. And this is supposed to fix it. Well, if we have a history of that, then we have to look at that. We have to heal that. And also in this instance, if someone gives us something because they've done something wrong and they wanted to fix it, well, we know that that doesn't fix it. We actually have to do the real work. We have to sit down and actually get to the bottom of what's amok. We need to clear out those elephants. We need to get rid of all of those. This is really important. And that's why as soon as there's some kind of issue with, you can't just keep giving me things, it's not going to fix anything. Whoa, we have to back up. This isn't about love languages. This is about unresolved issues. Because if there were no unresolved issues and they brought you flowers, what would stop you from smiling and being thankful? Unless you actually didn't like flowers, in which case, maybe they bring you something you do love, right? Quality time is a really interesting aspect of the love languages. And for me, it feels more like a reaction to a world where love didn't matter, where relationships and marriage were just economic units. You raise the kids, you go to work, you pay the bills, you do the thing, you have sex once in a while. But there was no such thing as quality time together. So for many, many people, well, for everyone, how do you have a genuine, intimate, tantric relationship if you don't have quality time? Right? It's one of the great challenges when you have children in the house to actually have bubble time for the couple, to make sure you get away, to make sure you have date night, to make sure you have a weekend together that someone else takes care of the kids for the weekend and you get to actually connect. This is quality time. And it is mandatory in all tantric relationships because otherwise, how do you even connect? When your attention is split between a million things because it's life, you can't connect because your attention is elsewhere. Even if You're still sort of holding hands in the background, and it's loving and it's kind and it's all that. To truly go into the places where we want to go and to feel nourished and feel energized and feel loved in that way, quality time is required. And if in a relationship, someone in the relationship doesn't want quality time, again, this is an interesting discussion. Then perhaps we actually are seeking different things in a relationship. Neither person is wrong. It just may be a misfit, right? It just may be an incompatibility. And then there's physical touch. Now, physical touch is very interesting because some people love to be touched and other people don't. Some people love to touch. Some people aren't really very touchy-feely. Now, there's a few different ways you can go with this one in the land of Tantra. Because touch is a very natural thing, right? When the baby is born, it's been proven time and time again in scientific circles and in spiritual, more organic circles that touch is absolutely required for the healthy growth of a child. When animals aren't touched, when the humans aren't touched, growth is stagnated. There's no question. We have lived in a very, very difficult world for generations. So the idea that touch is difficult to give or receive, it could be trauma from this life. It could be intergenerational trauma. It could be past lives. It could be anything. But it's worth healing. Because our inability to touch, our inability to receive touch, our inability to touch others is not human. This is something that has been normalized, but it's not healthy. We need to be able to be touched. This is a thing. Again, if you want tantric intimacy, like I'm not talking about someone who's just blissfully happy, enjoying their hermit life. There's a million ways to live that are perfectly perfect. And some of those do not include touch. They don't include 5 love languages. They don't include Tantra. They don't include anything. And it is a wonderful life. So this is not an across the board thing. This is within the context of tantric intimacy, intimate relationships with others. If we are afraid to receive touch, or we don't want to receive touch, one, it could be that we don't want to receive touch from this person, which of course is very important to look at. Are there unresolved issues? Or are you just not attracted to this person anymore or ever? This is very important. If you don't want to give touch, why not? Maybe you've never really been touched in loving, kind ways, and you're not really sure how to do it. Maybe you've done things before and you were judged, or people told you you were wrong, or it didn't feel good or something, so you have fear around it, like performance anxiety. All of these things are things to be healed. This isn't just one of those, hey, just accept me, this is who I am, that's the way it is. That's not it. Everything we have to do comes from the foundation of agape. If you love someone, right? If you actually genuinely love this person and both of you want to have a tantrically intimate relationship, both of you, this is not forcing anyone into a path they don't want. Both of you want this experience. Then you open up the conversation and you say, let's talk about touch. Well, I'm not really comfortable with touch. Well, what can we do to help with that? What are the baby steps we could do to help to heal? Well, I don't know. Well, maybe we can go for counseling. Well, I don't know. No, we need to heal this. It's not a thing. Okay, well, how can we heal it? Well, can we just start here? Maybe you pray together and you ask for guidance. Maybe you read a book You study Tantra, you do something together to try a very different perspective. And then you actually heal together. Or maybe on the other side, maybe you're really nervous about touching. Maybe sex isn't something you've done a lot of, and you just don't really know how to do it, or you don't know how to give a massage, and you don't, maybe your family wasn't really huggy and wasn't really touchy. Not that you want your family to be touchy-feely, but maybe you just haven't had a lot of that and you don't know what to do. So you say that. Honestly, I've not really had a lot of experience with touch. So what does the other person do? Well, I really like it when the touch is really gentle, or I really like it when I can really feel it in the muscle. Like this, can you put your hand here? And you can gently guide them. And you learn together and you teach together. This is love, right? And so the love languages are very interesting because they really help us play with this masculine feminine dynamic of giving and receiving. And they really help us to heal the places that we're struggling. And if we find ourselves getting caught in a place where we're angry at our partner because they aren't giving us love in the way we like, then we really have to look at us. We have to look at our own discontent. Because again, I'm talking about this within the context of Tantra. Tantra is not codependence. Being tantric is when you as a human being know that you are fully divine, fully physical. You are oneness with the universe. This is your journey. And then you become whole. And then when someone else comes along, you polarize into two halves. You become a greater whole and you dance within it. But you can't dance within it if you have expectations and needs to be met. That has to come back to us. So that's the interesting dance between agape, philia, eros, and the 5 love languages.